Bates has been test optional since 1984, which is awesome to say out loud. Hi, my name is Leigh Weisenburger, and I'm Dean of Admission and Financial Aid at Bates College in Lewiston, Maine. I came to Bates over 15 years ago, and when I chose to work here to enter the field of higher ed admission, it was a very intentional choice, in part because Bates is test optional, and not just because Bates is test optional, but because we've been a real pioneer in the movement. So we're just over the 35-year mark and have really been regarded as the leader in this movement, where we've been very vocal about our commitment to being test optional. Bates's move to become test optional certainly rooted in the college's overall mission and dedication to access and inclusion. So from our early days, our founding days, really sought to include, ultimately enroll students coming from a whole host of backgrounds, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of religion, regardless of socioeconomics. So as the college has progressed, as the college has evolved, we've sought to find modern day ways in which to keep that mission and commitment to access and inclusion alive and well. 35 plus years ago, test optional was on the table to say, as we looked at our admission policies, our admission practice, how could we remove barriers? How could we make this a more accessible process to all students? How could we provide a Bates education to students from more backgrounds, from diverse backgrounds, and give them that access? And the admission officers at the time, the admission dean at the time, and then ultimately with the support of the faculty and the entire college, voted to move to test optional, where they agreed that it was a barrier. If you're coming from an institution or you currently work at a college or a university where you've long required standardized testing, this is going to feel like a whole new world, and it's certainly going to rock the boat a little bit. So I recognize that there are likely to be challenges. So first and foremost would be just getting accustomed to not having the scores available in the applications. Many institutions already pride themselves in practicing holistic admission. Now more than ever is the moment to do that. So to really make sure that the way in which you review an application academically, but also the way in which you review an application overall, is rooted in that practice of holistic review. So that would be my advice. My second piece of advice, and this is a little bit more challenging in that it's a mind shift and will take practice and sort of muscle memory for readers in particular, but the committee overall, is don't go searching for that score. Don't go searching for something to replace that score. Rather say, these are the materials that the student submitted. This is what I have to review as the application in its entirety. Value that, celebrate that, and discover all that you can about the student, not going into it with sort of this deficit mindset of, oh, we don't have that number. Lift up and away from that, and not go searching for the score. So do the homework to work closely with your colleagues in admission, work closely with your communications office, whatever it might be termed on your campus, to figure out how to best articulate your policy clearly and succinctly, and to be singing the same song from your website to your print materials, if you still have them, to whatever your colleagues are saying in open sessions when speaking about the application requirements. You want to make sure that that is seamless and that it is tight. I would practice with your colleagues, so that I think about particularly some of the newer professionals that you might have in your office, if really pressed by a student or really pressed by a family where they're skeptical and trying to understand, so are you truly test optional? Are you sure you're not going to penalize my student when applying? That they've practiced that, so that there's a level of comfort and really relieving those students, those families, of those fears or those worries, so that they can proceed confidently through the process, but also that the staff member, that colleague feels like they've done their homework and they can say with certainty what the policy is. Colleges and universities have joined the movement and become test optional. For many colleges, they're doing this in a pilot way, so that they might be test optional for this coming cycle, maybe 2 years, 3 years, or TBD, but it's not necessarily a permanent admission policy at a number of colleges. And I respect that, I can appreciate that. We're all having to make decisions in a pretty quick way these days. And so to get out there with this year's admission cycle already underway, saying we're test optional, I can understand why many places are doing it in this pilot format. However, I would encourage you, as you move through this admission cycle and begin the actual review process, begin your committees, finalize your selection, that at every juncture you really think about the impact of being test optional, both for the applicants that are coming into your funnel, your admission funnel, and then the students that ultimately enroll, and do the analysis, keep the data to understand how this has impacted those pools and your processes overall. And hopefully in the end, you'll be able to exhibit that it's helped you diversify your pool, that it's brought in talent in new and different ways, and that you have real confidence in their ability to succeed at your institution. In terms of another tip is to keep the data so that you can track the effectiveness of being test optional, so that should your colleagues deem it worthwhile to pursue beyond a pilot year or two, you can put a case forward with evidence to the administrators at your college or whomever to say this is something we should do in perpetuity. Depending upon the year, we'll see in the ballpark range of 50% of our applicants choose not to submit standardized test scores when they apply to Bates. Upon enrollment, when we enroll the class, we will ask all students over the course of the summer prior to matriculation to submit their standardized test scores if they had them. So we keep those scores for internal research purposes. And a few years ago, former admission colleagues were able to do some research where we kept this longitudinal data over a 20-year period to exhibit that students who submitted their test scores at point of admission to Bates and those who did not, ultimately the difference in their Bates GPA was 0.03. It's pretty clear, scores or no scores, we were able to, with exceptional confidence, admit these students to the college, and they were able to succeed in wonderful ways. We still rest the bulk of our assessment and academic review on the transcript with the rigor of curriculum, all within context, so all within what has been available to the student at their given high school, on their writing, on their recommendations, to get a picture of who they are as a learner, how they'll add to the intellectual dialogue in their classroom, what makes them curious to learn, all of that good stuff. And the way we think about it is it's exhibiting persistence and performance over time. Yes, there might be blips along the way, fine, we're all human, but 3.5 years on a transcript is going to tell us a whole heck of a lot more than 3.5 hours on a Saturday morning. It continues to help us diversify our pool. I think it also just brings students to the table where they'll say, wow, okay, so Bates really just wants to get to know me. That it just lets students breathe a little bit easier, drop their shoulders to know, okay, that's one thing I don't have to think about or spend much time and energy on when focusing on Bates. So having test optional admission at Bates has enabled us to diversify our pool for certain. In fact, with this most recent class, so the class of 2024, we saw that the majority of our female applicants, the majority of our African American applicants, the majority of our Latinx applicants, and the majority of our first generation to college applicants utilize the test optional selection. So that exhibits to us clearly with hard data that by being test optional, we were able to open more doors and diversify our applicant pool.